You'll figure it.
I get to make a statement, correct?
Yes, yeah, you just, oh,
Long statement.
okay.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting here on September 17th. Before we get started, if we could all rise for our invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Lord God, we stand before you, and we thank you for the blessings that we each have received and our community has received, and the marvelous people that live in our community. We're so thankful for that. And Lord, as always, when we're here to part of our jobs is to govern. So we would ask that we would be given an extra measure of wisdom and discernment in undertaking the role of governance. And we thank you for all you do, and as always, each of us prays to you in the manner in which we were taught. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I want to welcome everybody in the audience tonight. Thank you for joining. Everybody who is viewing from home. We are here tonight to hear a grievance. And Doug, if you could.
Mr. Chair, I move that we enter into executive session in accordance with General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual.
Second.
Okay, we hear the motion in a second. We're going to have a roll call to open the meeting.
Dawes, aye.
Sadler, aye.
Fowler, aye.
And Bonavita, aye.
My understanding is that the target of this complaint wishes to have it in open session, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and can you just state your name for the record?
My name is Robert. My nickname is Red, and last name is Kelly. Kelley.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kelly. We will then stay in open session
Yes.
and proceed with the discussion on the complaint.
Okay. All right.
So I can,
Yeah, if you could. So for everybody in the audience, we have Town Attorney Tim Zeston with us tonight to help us through. So we will start with Attorney Zeston with the outline of the complaint. We also, if you could, introduce yourself. Oh, you already did. I'm sorry. You're good. Choose my motion. So Tim, why don't you go ahead with that?
all right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kelly, as all of you know, provides IT services for the town, and in the case that we're here to discuss, he was providing some services to the town's fire department. Just by way of background, two members of the fire department were terminated earlier this year, 2018, and thereafter entered into a settlement agreement with the town in which the parties agreed to reinstate both of those members. Those members were Craig Lampert and Rusty Ricker. As part of that agreement, the town agreed to bring him back to work starting August 1st, 2018. That agreement occurred on July 13 or 14th, 2018. So in the weeks and months leading up to that, their return to service in early August, arrangements were being made to make sure their gear was in place, make sure their shift assignments were clear, and make sure they had access to the town's email account and the town's scheduling software. This is where Mr. Kelly came in. Mr. Kelly was responsible for lack of a better term, resetting their passwords and allowing them to get access to their email accounts. Mr. Kelly, as part of that job, assigned passwords to Mr. Ricker and to Mr. Lampert. And Mr. Lampert filed a complaint on July 31st, 2018 with Chief Mitchell, in which he made a complaint against Mr. Kelly and other actions that were aimed at another town employee, which were subject to an earlier executive session. But with respect to the allegations against Mr. Kelly, Mr. Lampert was alleged that Mr. Kelly, in his role as the IT expert or IT vendor for the town, assigned him and Mr. Ricker passwords that were intended to be offensive or somehow retaliatory for actions that Mr. Lampert and Ricker had taken in the past. So specifically, Mr. Lampert wrote as follows. He was troubled that while restoring email passwords for Rusty and
Can I
himself.
interrupt for 1 second?
Hold on. You'll get a chance.
No, but I was going to read the email in full instead of you doing an abbreviation.
I will. I'll take care of it. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
So he was troubled that this somehow deviated from passwords that were given to other members in the past. Mr. Lampert said that, quote unquote, the previous passwords had been $ let me in 1. And instead they were given some other passwords, namely Franklin 1736 $ and Union Fire 1736 exclamation point. While initially unexplainable to Mr. Lampert, he was awoken in the middle of the night by memory of a topic covered in his History of Fire Prevention course, and it was a poem or a memory device in which firefighters learned the following phrase: Union Fire Company, sometimes called Benjamin Franklin's Bucket Brigade, was a volunteer fire department formed in Philadelphia in 1736 with the assistance of Benjamin Franklin. It is my belief, that's Mr. Lampert speaking, that Mr. Kelly, is referring to us as volunteers. The term volunteer has been contentious to say the least. We have battled with the town on numerous occasions regarding the term and classification, whether it be through payroll, the attempted declassification of employees of the fire department, or most recently during our initial union organization processes. We are employees of the town of Georgetown, and throughout the history of my employment, the intent and use of the term volunteer has been offensive and derogatory in nature. Pertaining to Rusty's password, which, just to remind everybody, was Franklin 1736 $, it is even more disturbing to Mr. Lampert. Never mind Franklin's position of chief, the term Franklin also pertains to a sexual act. This is the most troubling for me due to the sexual harassment allegations the town brought against Mr. Ricker. So according to Mr. Lampert, it is his belief that the assignment of those particular passwords created a hostile work environment for both him and Deputy Chief Ricker. With that said, and I apologize for cutting you off, I'll allow Mr. Kelly to respond to these allegations.
Well, first I'd like to thank the Selectmen for allowing me to clarify this vexing issue relating to the passwords for the fire department staff. I have nothing but respect and admiration for the members of the Georgetown Public Safety. They have helped me when I got in a car accident. They were there for my family when a nearby lightning struck set off all the smoke detectors in my house, scaring everyone in my house. And I've been happy to donate time and equipment at different times to public safety and the school system. I am chagrined at using the Selectmen's valuable time that they volunteer for the betterment of Georgetown as do all other volunteer boards and volunteer committees. I also lament having to use up the valuable time of any firefighter or police officer to investigate these claims, especially after the extremely busy week they've had protecting Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover. I was going to continue to read the email that Mr. Lambert sent. I'm just going to finish the sections that the attorney did not, after it brought the sexual harassment allegations brought against Rusty Ricker. The email continues to say, "This is unacceptable, as Red is operating as the agent of the town and under your direction. This latest action, coupled with the rat being found by my locker, indications of the gear that lay out untouched in the office for months, has been hastily removed and packed into general storage after our initial agreement to return was made in Boston. Then the issuing of said equipment clearly dirty and not ready for service, our SCADA mask and department IDs being lost, are not indicative of fostering healthy work relations as we agreed.
Red, if we could interrupt you for 1 second, please. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so we dealt with those allegations.
Now the next three lines have pertain to me. So, great.
As long as they
Hold on,
pertain
hold on.
to you, I guess, right, Tim?
Yeah, I would just ask. Hold on.
Go ahead.
You'll get a chance to respond. I would just politely request that you refrain from referring to the allegations against the other individual listed in this.
I will not use the other individual's name
Okay, or his
or his title.
I appreciate that.
Okay. I'll try not to. In this reading, I won't. These actions go well beyond unprofessional, creating a hostile work environment and are harassing in nature. This atmosphere cannot and will not be tolerated. I request a written reply and the finding steps taken to safeguard our return and free and hostile and harassment. I will also be forwarding this email to the town administrator. I added town administrator Mike Farrell to serve as official notice for the town's personnel director of a hostile and harassing work environment. That's the end of that. I would like to offer my support for Lieutenant Lambert in dealing with the issues brought on by my choices of passwords. But as I stated earlier, my support and respect for public safety in Georgetown and across the United States of America is immense. There is nothing nefarious with using the passwords that I did. I would like to offer the following clarifications on helping Lieutenant Lambert's point to help clearing up Lieutenant Lambert's point in his email. 1. Deviation from standard password. Georgetown does not have a standard password. Georgetown does have a standard format for passwords, needing to include caps, numbers, and special characters. This format helps protect the town's security on the town network. For new employees, some of my engineers have used the same startup password, but there is not a standard, and users are directed to change their password immediately. Since there is no precedence for a deputy chief like Mr. Ricker, there's no precedence for the deputy chief like Mr. Ricker or a lieutenant like Mr. Lambert being terminated and then having their union get their jobs back. There is absolutely no default password, especially since IT has never dealt with this situation in the Georgetown Fire Department before. The passwords were chosen by me out of the respect and admiration of the fire service and its illustrious history, starting with Benjamin Franklin in 1736, creating the Union Firehouse. 2, referring to Mr. Lieutenant Lambert as a volunteer. I did not knowingly infer the definition of volunteer onto Lieutenant Lambert. I mean no disrespect to Lieutenant Lambert, especially with Georgetown having the Erie Fire Association number 4, the oldest privately volunteer fire department in the United States of America, celebrating 164 years of service at Georgetown. Also, with 70% of the 1,160,450 United States firefighters being volunteer, I never would have thought the term volunteer as an insult or derogatory. These numbers are based on the National Fire Protection Association's latest reports. Franklin is a sex act. Absolutely not. Did I ever know that there was a sex act using the term Franklin? I needed to use an urban dictionary to find out what depravity it involved that Lieutenant Lambert wrote about. I would never associate the name of the United States founding fathers, one of the world's most prolific inventors of his time, and the founder of the modern U.S. Fire Department, as a sex act. The point about Deputy Ricker investigated for sexual harassment. Until reading Lieutenant Lambert's email, I never knew Deputy Ricker was charged with and investigated for sexual harassment. Since the Georgetown internal private investigation of sexual harassment was never part of public record, like the Me Too movement exposing workplace sexual harassment or assault, how would I ever know that Deputy Chief Ricker was investigated for these deeds? Unacceptable, as Red is operating as an agent of the town. I am not an agent of the town. I'm a vendor to the town. I have no hiring, firing, or personal impact at the town of Georgetown. Under the direction of Chief Mitchell, my company was directed to reinstate previously terminated Deputy Chief Ricker and terminated Lieutenant Lambert by Chief Mitchell. Chief Mitchell did not give me or my staff any technical direction or what the password should or should not be. These actions go well beyond unprofessional, create a hostile work environment, and are harassing in nature. Setting passwords to a very reasonable value with a direct correlation to the job scope of the reinstated employee that follows the secure format needed to maintain network integrity and security does not even come close to fall into the realm of unprofessional, harassing in nature, or rising to the hostile work environment. I would like to now continue and follow on with the letters of recommendation from past, present department heads, the Chief of Police, past and present fire chiefs, as a testament to the excellent team I work with, their integrity, mine and my company's professionalism. We'll open up. I believe the selectmen were given some of these. We'll open up from a letter from to the Honorable Selectmen of Town of Georgetown. This is from Chairman Bonavita. This is from Don Kovmer, the current Chief of Police. I'm writing this letter in request of our IT support company, Boston Systems and Solutions, specifically at the request of the principal owner, Red Kelly. I received this email from Mr. Kelly as a result of his service providing the services provided to the Georgetown Fire Department. In summary, I've been working with Mr. Kelly and BSS for the last 9 years, which include initial implementation of our existing technology plan for the Georgetown Police Department. During my time, Mr. Kelly has been a commensurate professional, and most important, his integrity has been critical to the operation of the police department on a daily basis. Additionally, Mr. Kelly has been able to transcend the police department well beyond our expectations and has done so with fiscal responsibility and commitment to excellence. As part of the above request, I was provided with the email from Mr. Kelly concerning the allegations against him on creating a hostile work environment and harassing in nature by the members of the Georgetown Fire Department. I have read the email at the center of allegation and find the allegations against Mr. Kelly to not only be inaccurate, but ridiculous at best. He has served in a very sensitive environment for the police department, and as example, has had to reset hundreds of passwords, all the while maintaining absolute security with utilizing creative wording to ensure absolute security to our system and employees. Recently, the police department experienced a malware attack with cryptovirus, and the department's entire database was held hostage. Mr. Kelly and his team immediately responded, and after many hours of intense work on our systems, were able to retrieve all of the department's data without harm. The town also do not have to pay any ransom to retrieve the data, and as many municipalities have had to do in the recent months. In closing, Mr. Kelly's professionalism and commitment to the town in Georgetown is without question, in my opinion, and my hope is this situation will be resolved accordingly. I will jump to an email that you received from Thomas Berube, assessing manager. I've recently become familiar with the letter of complaint authored by Mr. Lambert regarding his objections to the offense with email passwords established for himself and Mr. Ricker by Mr. Kelly, the owner of Boston Systems and Solutions, the town's IT service provider. Without addressing the absurdity of the claims or any suspicion that may be more about attacking Chief Mitchell than Mr. Kelly, I would offer you the following professional experience with Mr. Kelly, as I had numerous collaborations with him on a variety of projects over the years while a member of the Board of Assessors, and more recently as the assessing department's head. These projects have included establishing email accounts, password, deployment of remote access software, including passwords, implementation of a new server platform, the user account operating systems, including passwords, as well as other technical issues. In every case, the encounter with Mr. Kelly I have found to be technically astute, exceedingly thorough, and commensurately professional and uncompromising, conscientious about protecting the town at the highest level of cybersecurity. His well-grounded concern with his security, in my experience, results in the establishment of very strong temporary passwords that are not easily guessed by hackers, while simultaneously retaining a relevance and contents to the user to allow the user to remember them. To suggest anything beyond is preposterous. Gonna be a long one, guys.
Thank you.
We'll go to Mike Anderson, citizen and former, the head of the school department, maintenance department, and the former chief of the fire department. I would like to give a character reference for Robert Kelly of Boston Systems and Solutions. In my time as fire chief for the town of Georgetown, Robert and his staff have done outstanding professional work for the town and the fire department. During my tenure as the Georgetown Fire Department, I experienced Boston Systems workmanship, customer service, the ability to work with others, and the next to perfect. When working with Robert Kelly one-on-one for the technology issues, he was at all times professional and courteous. This is from Peter Durkee, the highway surveyor. Dear sirs, it is my pleasure to write this letter from the behalf of Mr. Robert Red Kelly. As the contractor IT company for the town, I have worked with Boston Systems and Solutions, in particular with Red, on numerous occasions for over my 12 years as highway surveyor. Mr. Kelly has always been prompt, professional, when responding to requests for assistance that I have submitted on the behalf of the highway department. Recently, Red had worked on the highway department's reset Wi-Fi password. The password that Mr. Kelly selected for the highway department is the Latin name for asphalt or pavement. In my opinion, Mr. Kelly's selection of the particular password indicated a thoughtfulness about the particular company or department he was working for. Additionally, by Mr. Kelly selecting an uncommon password, he is helping the highway department to ensure that our emails are protected and secure. Mr. Kelly has proven himself to be reliable, professional, highly qualified as a contracted IT professional for the town of Georgetown. I look forward to continuing my professional relationship with him. This is from the current Chief Fred Mitchell. I'm writing this letter as a request of Robert Red Kelly, who is our town's information technology vendor, through this company, Boston Systems and Solutions. As the chief of the Georgetown Fire Department for the past 3 years, I have had the opportunity to interact with Mr. Kelly as a vendor of the town. I found Mr. Kelly as conduct himself in a very respectful and professional manner. I have found Mr. Kelly to be knowledgeable and has an expertise in the field regarding information technology. Mr. Kelly is very dependable and responsive to the needs and has proven on many occasions. Also, I find Mr. Kelly is willing to go the extra mile to accomplish the task to ensure that our information technology infrastructure is operating at maximum capacity. On a personal note, over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to interact with Mr. Kelly as we may pass in town hall, even in the community. I have had conversations with Mr. Kelly regarding the fire department operations and my visions of the future department. Mr. Kelly is very cordial, respectful, and interested in the fire department's operation. Also, Mr. Kelly is well respected in our community. He attends spring and fall town meeting as a supporter of the town. Also, Mr. Kelly is an annual contributor to the fire department's annual sanitor. In closing, I find Mr. Kelly a gentleman who is respectful to others. This is from the head of the Council of Aging. Dear board members, it is my pleasure to write a letter of recommendation for Robert Red Kelly, as well as his business, Boston Systems and Solutions. During my past 11 years, Red and his staff have worked closely, positively planning and resolving any IT issue that have affected the Council on Aging. When the Georgetown Council on Aging moved into the Georgetown Senior Community Center in February 7, 2017, Red and his staff worked through thoroughly and diligently to move and set up the new communications, the network systems, the Council on Aging at the Senior Center. Their work was completed and required highly skilled coordination with several town departments and communication providers. Red and his staff were highly knowledgeable, professional in working with the Council on Aging to establish a network and communication system at the Senior Center that will work well into the future. Mr. Kelly and his staff at Boston Systems and Solutions have always been responsive, knowledgeable, and professional in working with the Council on Aging staff to troubleshoot and resolve IT communications issues at the Senior Center. I am glad to write this letter for recommendation for Red Kelly, and I'm confident they will continue to be an asset and a valued support for the Senior Center and our town departments. This is from Peter Lucia, past principal of the school. I have the pleasure of knowing Robert Red Kelly for the past 9 years, as I involved parent and technology vendor in my role of principal of Georgetown Middle High School. Part of my responsibilities during most of my time at Georgetown involved being the technology contact for the district. On occasion, during that time, I worked with Red in Boston Systems. As a parent, Red was very involved and interested in not only in a quality education experience for the children, but all of his children, but all of the children in Georgetown. There was rarely a concert, event, open house, teacher conference, or DECA activity that I did not see Red in attendance. I found him to be empathetically concerned for the well-being for the students of Georgetown Middle High School and a strong supporter of the district. He was responsible and very easily to work with. There were several occasions when Red came in to volunteer to fix some technology issues that we were experiencing because he wanted the best for the children of Georgetown. As a vendor of technology, we called upon Red on several occasions when our network and our email servers were down. He also brought Boston Systems and Solutions to analyze our wired and wireless network and fix several issues. I found Red to be extremely knowledgeable, efficient, honest, and a man of integrity. He was quick to respond and stood by his work. I would not hesitate to recommend Red or his company without reservation. We were truly fortunate to have him available to us. So, can you tell me how I created a hostile work environment?
All right.
So that is certainly the allegation. The Board of Selectmen is here tonight to hear that allegation, and Mr. Kelly, your response to that allegation. You're obviously a very well-respected member of the community and appears, based on the numerous references you've provided, a very professional service to the members of the town.
Okay. So what we're going to do now, Rez, which is going to get to the board. I'm sure the members have some questions, comments, things of that nature. So what I'd like to do is kind of go from here down. Okay, so Doug, why don't you get us started?
Well, this isn't someplace that I wanted to be, but we are. And although I don't know you well, we have spoken on several occasions. I've never left any conversation with any inkling that you had any malice towards anybody. And I just better leave it at that, okay?
Okay.
Because I'm very upset by this.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I too, as you stated, Red, I wasn't aware that there was any derogatory perception of the word volunteer. I actually took it upon myself to look up and see what is the definition of a volunteer firefighter. So I found on the Social Security Administration website, if I could read it, a volunteer firefighter works part-time or on call and may have other jobs. Although they are volunteers, employers may pay them as employees when they respond to an emergency or participate in training drills. An on-call firefighter may also volunteer time for other non-emergency duties such as training, fundraising, and maintaining equipment. And it goes on and explains it a little bit more in terms of what's the line between, whether they are an employee or not. The other section that I read was from the Department of Labor, and the Department of Labor, just a synopsis, had pretty much the same language, and the question there was, well, what's considered a nominal fee. And it was comparing between what an employee is and what a volunteer is. And according to the Department of Labor, individuals do not lose their volunteer status if they receive a nominal fee from a public agency. A nominal fee is not a substitute for compensation and must not be tied to productivity. However, this does not preclude the payment of a nominal fee amount on a per call or similar basis to volunteer firefighters. So, to me, I don't think it's derogatory. I think it is what it is according to the Department of Labor and according to the Social Security Administration. So I don't have any issue with that. About Franklin being a sex act or whatever it was, that's new to me. I do know, though, I have a new term that I know my son uses it all the time. He says lit. And I didn't know what lit meant, but I know what lit means now. That's actually cool. But Franklin, that wouldn't even occur to me. So sorry that this has come up. I personally don't think that any of these claims can be substantiated. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, Red, thank you for coming so well prepared. I looked this over. As you can see, I've got many things here, some from earlier, some from today. But, and I want to especially thank you for the figures that you came prepared with about the firefighters and how many do volunteer, because that is one of the things that I had highlighted. The passwords, I looked at that and I thought, okay, could there be anything there? So, believe it or not, gentlemen, I went on Google and asked about Union Fire Company in 1736.
You went on Google?
And I got quite a bit of information.
Hold on, stop it.
You're absolutely right.
I feel good that I got you to go on Google. This is awesome.
And, you know, and I thought, creative. And then we've got, I have two of the letters that you read, and in both of them, I mean, the one from Tom here, I mean, it mentions how you retain a relevance contact to the user that the user may easily remember. And that's just what I thought that you did here. And, you know, and
Actually, I
the
felt
chief of police says the same, you know, you utilize creative wording to ensure absolute, so that took any doubt out of my mind. So again, you know, it's too bad that we have to be here. But, you know, I want you to know that I did look, and to the person that somehow feels he's been injured, I took it seriously. You took it seriously, I think, also. And, you know, I personally can see nothing done wrong here on this. And as to the other one, I'm not even going to mention it, but I don't even see that that's applicable here. I don't see how one employee mentions the other one, and we're even really looking at it as being applicable. As a matter of fact, I'd like to ask, do we have a policy about sharing passwords? I mean, when you know, your password you're supposed to keep, and that's supposed to be for you, not to be shared with other employees of town. And I think that I find disturbing. So I think I'm gonna end with that.
Okay, thank you. So, so a little bit for me. So, you know, I find it disturbing when someone, you know, needs to try to, you know, bring someone of such stature like yourself, Fred, down for such nonsense. And that's what this is. It's complete nonsense. I don't think he knows you at all. But I would think that you have more interesting things to do than to form passwords that are derogatory to employees. by the way, if you don't have better things to do, I would encourage. There's a lot of things out there. Go get a hobby, right? So that first and foremost is completely ridiculous. But I also was extremely impressed with the history of what you came prepared with, and I certainly thank you for that. I also, it's really too bad when someone doesn't understand someone else. I think this could have been easily, hey, you know what, can I have Red's phone number? Let me just have a conversation with Red. Let me give him some thoughts. And I think that could have easily been done on a phone call, and you could have had a good conversation about it. You could have given him some feedback as to why the passwords were set or whatever. But I do want to reiterate that Red is a very successful, established business owner, very respected, obviously, by many, including myself. I think it is really too bad that Red has to be here, but I also appreciate the fact that everybody, your name is the biggest thing that you have in life, right? And I appreciate, Red, that you came equipped to defend your name. Although I will tell you, you really didn't have to, because this wasn't something that I think needed to happen. So number one, I want to thank you for being here, but also number two, just sincerely apologize to you that you had to be here. It is I think from the letters that you got, from some of the feedback that you've already received here, that no one really holds you in malice for this. It's not in your nature, it's not in your personality, and I certainly hope you don't hold it against the town for one individual who wanted to bring this against you. So I want to thank you for everything you do for the town. We are in a very pivotal spot in the town in terms of changing technologies, implementing certain upgrades to our technology. This board here has a lot of requests for money to upgrade technology here, there, the schools obviously as well, and as a vendor, not an agent, as a vendor, you're a vital piece of that. I want to thank you for everything that you do, and again, sincerely apologize that you had to be here tonight. Okay.
I appreciate you letting me here, and one of the things in closing is that when I picked the password, I don't know Mr. Lambert at all.
Yep.
I know Rusty. Until this, I had no problem. I love what he did with the Sanator. I create those passwords out of respect.
Mhm.
I love history. I've been to Franklin's house. I've seen the Union Firehouse where it was. It was respectful comment. So to have it taken as negatively as it was hurtful, because of the fact that I just was showing, and again, I don't know Mr. Lambert, but Rusty I've known for years. Our kids have graduated together. I was just showing him respect, and to have it taken the wrong way is what got my dander up.
Yep.
Because he's been a great guy in the town, and
Yep.
so I appreciate the chance to defend myself.
Sure.
But one of the things I'm glad is my guys are why I have a good business. So insulting me insults them. So my job as kind of the boss is to make sure that no one goes after my guys. And
Well,
I
then
want-
already apologize to
so-
them for us as well, because
so-
it is something that again, a majority
Cool.
here are not implying that you
Great.
had one individual. So yes, sir.
Mr. Chair. So, just a question for attorneys, yes, sir, is the Mr. Lambert, he was given the opportunity to be here today, correct? It's a public session.
It is an open session, yes.
Okay.
Whether it was on the agenda for executive session, and I advised Attorney Peel is here for the union today. I advised another counselor for the union that it was likely that at least one of these executive sessions would be held in open session.
Okay,
So
great.
he was aware that it was likely to be, at least a portion of it would be held in open session.
Okay, great. And Janet, just for the record, in case people can't see the audience, Mr. Lambert is not here this evening.
No, he is not.
Okay, thank you.
What I'd also like to add is this. I find that these are allegations. There were two sessions of this. That I truly feel like and Red, I think you alluded to this, that our time can be utilized much better than how we utilize it tonight. But I also, what further disturbs me is, Tim, I love seeing you, all the time, but I want to make sure that people realize that Tim comes with a bill to him. There's a big dollar sign right on the top of his head, and we'll get that bill. And that bill is paid for by the townspeople. All right, we are going to pay this through the money that comes into the town. So, as much as I would like, any time for a town employee to voice their displeasure, if they have a complaint, we will certainly hear it. But to hear about passwords and sexual implications regarding, again, a founding father's last name, which nobody, I think, here knew about. So it actually bothers me that Mr. Lambert knows what that is. I don't think anybody has actually thought of that. But, I think when we write the check for Attorney Zessen's time, it's going to be one of the most unuseful, set of monies that we've ever spent, in town. And it's somewhat laughable. So for those, out there watching, in the audience and at home, keep that in mind, when it comes down to, hey, we have, because I've heard a lot about two firefighters rather than kind of knowing what's going on. And we're going to write a check for something completely ridiculous tonight. So that's a huge problem for me. So with that being said, is there any further discussion on this board? No, if not.
Chairman, I have just one quick question for Mr. Kelly.
Sure.
Mr. Kelly, when these two members receive the passwords, do they have the capability of either requesting a change in the password or changing that password themselves?
Immediately hit Control-Alt-Delete, change password, it was done.
And that's something that they
They've-
understand how to do.
I don't know about Mr. Lambert. I've never discussed, this with him. I know Rusty has been explained in the long past how to change a password. It's a quick Google search on how to change a password, or if you put it in a ticket to Janet, to us, we would remote in and change the password to whatever the consumer would like, and we can do that remotely. And it's part of our built-in monthly charge, so there's no additional fee for that. If they want to keep on changing their password, and the town has a set password expiration schedule to protect the town from security. So people's passwords expire. Not as often as I would like, but as often as we all agreed was, feasible for the town to deal with. So to change a password is seconds.
And did Mr. Lampert request a password change in
No,
this
sir.
case?
No, sir, we had no ticket, no call for that at all.
All right, so are there any further questions?
No.
Okay, so at this point, we are at a point where the board has heard the allegations regarding the password, Mr. Kelly's response to that complaint, as well as the previous complaints that were subject to the earlier executive session. Now, the board, the ball's in your court, and you're here to discuss and deliberate as to whether there's proof or evidence that the town's discrimination policy was violated as alleged by Mr. Lampert. And just to state it clearly, here is what the town's anti-discrimination policy states. The town of Georgetown intends to provide a work environment that is pleasant, professional, and free from intimidation, hostility, or other offenses that might interfere with work performance. Harassment of any sort, verbal, physical, and visual, will not be tolerated. The policy then goes on to describe the term harassment, but I think it's pretty clear, and the definition speaks for itself. So at this point, I'll turn things back to members of the board to discuss whether you believe that there has been substantiation for the allegations in Mr. Lampert's complaint.
Okay, so with that being said, members of the board, is there any further discussion about this? I know I am ready
Well,
to vote
Mr. Chair,
this.
what
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to
Go
do
ahead.
is make a motion
Yes.
that can be seconded for discussion and then a vote.
Okay. I'm in for that.
Mr. Chair, I move for a determination that there is no substantiation for the allegations contained in Mr. Lampert's Lieutenant Lampert's July 31st complaint of discrimination.
Second.
Okay, motion is second, discussion on the board. Any further?
No, I'm very sorry that this has happened. And well, it's things that happen in employer-employee relationships, and it's too bad that it got to this stage. It's very disturbing, especially some of these allegations that, I mean, if I don't know what it is, then. So anyhow, I'm glad you came, and I'm glad you stated your position.
Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion? Go ahead, Gary.
On what I mentioned about, do we have a policy or anything about passwords? And should we,
I believe we have a password policy, and I think it is just that, a professional use policy, and it's been a long time.
I just think we may wanna just make sure with Mike as personnel director that if any letter needs to go out or anything, that we do follow up in that way.
Well, yes. The employees of the town may need a reminder not to share passwords.
Good point.
And most of the employees of the town are excellent at, trying their best in today's world of 10,000 passwords from everything to doing their best.
Right.
And they're always asking, hey, how can we do it better? So, the only one I think they really share the passwords with is if a technician comes up and has to use their machine, but they're very good at not sharing them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything further? Okay, so we have the motion, it's been seconded. There is no other discussion. The motion is to,
The motion is
We're fine now.
for a determination that there is no substantiation
I just
for
wanna
the
make sure that was clear.
allegations contained in Lieutenant Lampert's
So this
July
is a no
31st complaint of
substantiation.
discrimination.
Okay,
We need a roll call vote.
yep, we need a roll call vote, so, with that, roll call vote?
A question.
Yeah.
We want an aye on this, is what we want, the way you,
Right, 'cause
the way you worded it? I'm
Well,
not
you
sure.
can-
You can
I wanna
vote
be
aye or
sure.
nay,
We're
but
saying
you
there's
can-
no
you can say nay.
substantiation,
Okay.
so,
I'll vote aye.
Sadler, aye.
Bonnevier, aye.
Dawes, aye.
One further point that we should address, Mr. Chairman, is that the personnel policies require a written decision of the board within 30 days after the complaint was forwarded to the board.
Okay.
I think we have approximately 2 weeks to do that based on when Mr. Lampert forwarded the complaint to the board.
Okay.
I would recommend taking a second vote right now to authorize one member of the board, maybe yourself, to work with town council to draft that decision.
Okay,
All right, Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the chairman of the Georgetown Board of Selectmen to work with town council on a written decision regarding the matter of Lieutenant Lampert's July 31st complaint of discrimination.
Second.
okay, motion is second, discussion on that? One question that I have for the board is, so I'm going to, work with town council, it does need to be submitted, does the board have to see that letter before we do submit it? Does it need to be
So
signed by everybody?
the purpose of holding this motion, or to vote on this motion, would be to avoid having to meet
Have
again.
to do that, so.
You're
you
welcome
trust
if-
me. Okay.
Right.
I
Right.
just wanna make sure the board understands that, cause I don't want anybody to come and say, hey, we didn't see it,
No, no, I think, my
Because the
understanding.
motion is that I can work with
Right.
town council, right?
Right.
but the actual letter, does the board have to see that letter first?
They don't, it would be signed by
No, we
you,
don't.
unless they,
We've given you the authorization
Okay.
to work with town council on a letter
As long as we're,
and to sign it on behalf of
board.
the Board of Selectmen.
All right.
That's what the motion is.
okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, roll call vote on that.
Fowler, aye.
Sadler, aye.
Dawes, aye.
And Bonnevier, aye. Okay. Anything further, Attorney Zestin?
I think that is it.
Once again, I want to thank everybody, for attending this evening. Certainly appreciate everybody out in the audience. Thank you so much. If we could get a motion.
So moved.
How do we do that? Do we have to say that
Do
we're
we
not
have to-
going back into executive session?
So you move to, well, you're currently in open session, so you just move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, right.
So
Motion
I
to
move,
adjourn.
yeah, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. Good night.
So we're.